Introducing the Sea of Galilee, Hulah Valley, Golan, and Mount Hermon. Commentary for Satellite Bible Atlas, Map 1.5. The area depicted on Map 1.5 is located in the northeast corner of Israel. Let's note the different regions appearing on Map 1.5. First is Upper Galilee, a rugged mountainous region, in some places reaching nearly 4,000 feet in elevation. Cut by deep valleys, there is very little recorded biblical history which occurred in Upper Galilee. Next is the Hulah Valley, a wide, agriculturally productive plain which serves as the gateway to Israel from the north. To the north is Mount Hermon, over 9,000 feet high. Often snow-covered, the majestic Mount Hermon finds a place in biblical metaphor. Rain and snow from Mount Hermon provide water for the upper Jordan River. On the east are the Golan Heights, in the Bible called Bashan. Bashan, or Golan, is divided into Upper Golan, with some heights close to 4,000 feet above sea level, and Lower Golan, just east of the Sea of Galilee. Then, due north of the Sea of Galilee is the Chorazim Sill, like Golan, made up of basalt rock from cooled lava. The upper Jordan River cuts through between the Chorazim Sill and Lower Golan as it descends to the Sea of Galilee. Now take a closer look at the Sea of Galilee.
And this is the Sea of Galilee.
The Sea of Galilee is a freshwater lake, providing about 1/3 of the freshwater needs of the modern state of Israel. At its widest point, it is 7 miles or 11 kilometers from east to west. It is about 12 miles or 19 kilometers north to south. Although most of the lake is much shallower, the water at its deepest point is 125 feet or 38 meters deep. For many Westerners, a body of water this size would be considered a lake. In fact, the Gospel of Luke does refer to it as a lake. But in the Semitic mindset, any large body of water is considered a sea. Remember that the Sea of Galilee is part of the Great Syro-African Rift Valley. The shores along the sea are a hub for routes. As part of the Great Rift Valley, the surface of the Sea of Galilee is 700 feet or 210 meters below sea level. Note some of the major cities along the shores of the Sea of Galilee. We will go clockwise around the lake, starting on the western side with Tiberias. The city of Tiberias was built in AD 19 by Herod Antipas to be the provisional capital of Galilee. Antipas, Herod the Great's son, named the city in honor of Tiberius Caesar. Excavations have exposed parts of the Roman city, including a 1st century AD theater to the south of the modern city. The Gospels make no mention of Jesus in Tiberias, but the city appears in the Gospel of John, chapter 6. Next, note the Wadi, or Valley of Arbel, and the town of Magdala on the shore. Note that the Sea of Galilee is bound by steep slopes, except in 3 areas: the Magdala-Gennesaret plain, the plain of Bethsaida on the northeast side of the lake, and in the south, the lower Jordan plain. The Arbel Valley is one place where the international route from the Jezreel Valley can descend to the shore and then travel along the flat Magdala Plain to the north. The Magdala Plain, also called the plain of Gennesaret or Gennesar, is described by the 1st century Jewish historian Josephus as the ambition of nature because of the variety of fruit trees that grow here. Ruins of the town of Magdala have been excavated here.
We're here at the ruins of Magdala, a city on the west side of the Sea of Galilee. It was here that Mary Magdalene grew up, a woman whom Jesus cast out 7 evil spirits from. Behind me are the ruins of an ancient 1st century AD synagogue.
The Magdala synagogue was not large, about 11 by 11 yards or meters. Worshippers sat around the perimeter, facing each other. This is the kind of building, in this case perhaps in this very building, where people saw and heard Jesus as he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. Sites north of Magdala include Gennesar, also called Gennesaret, and Chinnereth, pronounced in Hebrew Kinneret.
Behind me is a first-century boat found on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. It's like the boats that Jesus and his disciples would have sailed the waters with.
Here is a view of Tel Kinneret, or Chinnereth, looking south to the plain of Magdala. The Sea of Galilee is called Kinneret in Hebrew, which means a stringed instrument, like a violin. This town took its name from the sea. Archaeological excavations have exposed both Old Testament and New Testament period remains here. Just northwest of Chinnereth is Tabga, an Arabic form of the Greek heptapagon, meaning 7 springs. Tabga is only 2 miles from Capernaum, and could be the location of a number of events described in the Gospels. Perhaps the call of Jesus to Peter, Andrew, James, and John to leave their nets. Maybe even the post-resurrection appearance of Jesus to the apostles on the shore.
We're on the northern shores of the Sea of Galilee, near Capernaum, where springs bring water into the Sea of Galilee. This is a good place for fishing.
Just above Tabga, represented by the small yellow dot on map 1-5, is the traditional location of the Mount of Beatitudes, where Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount. Although the Catholic Church is recent, the terrain here fits the description of the Sermon on the Mount given in the Gospels. As described in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus took his disciples, with the newly designated 12 apostles, to a flat plain, perhaps the Tabga plain seen beyond, closer to shore. Jesus healed many among the crowds, and then, as the Gospel of Matthew describes, he moved up the slope of a hill and spoke the Sermon on the Mount. There are parallels between Moses on Mount Sinai and Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. In the sermon, Jesus gave divinely inspired interpretation of the law of Moses. He also said that his called-out community of disciples may experience difficulty and persecution in the current age, but will be blessed in the age to come. On the north side of the Sea of Galilee are the 3 cities where Jesus did most of his miracles: Capernaum, Chorazin, and Bethsaida. Of all places on the surface of the earth, this relatively small area on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee became a chief witness that Jesus is the designated Messiah, Son of David, who will usher in the future blessed era. These are the ruins of Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus during his public ministry in Galilee. The octagonal-shaped building is a modern church built over a Byzantine period church, which in turn was built over earlier ruins, like the remains of houses and other buildings which can be seen here. The main ancient structure is the reconstructed white limestone Byzantine period synagogue, which may be built over a synagogue from the time of Jesus.
We're here in Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus during his public Galilean ministry.
We're standing out here in a synagogue. This particular synagogue was built several centuries after the time of Christ, but beneath it was a pre-existing foundation that may have been part of the synagogue where Jesus taught.
After the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus came here and preached a sermon, and in John 6, we read these words, "I am the living bread that came down out of heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever, and the bread also which I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." These things he said in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum.
The location of Bethsaida still remains uncertain. Some suggest that Bethsaida was located here, at a site called Et Tel, on the north side of the Bethsaida plain. But archaeological excavations here have shown that mainly this location was an Old Testament period city. Another possibility was that Bethsaida was located closer to the Sea of Galilee, perhaps here, at this so far unexcavated site called El Araj, near the mouth of the Jordan River. Chorazin is the 3rd city where Jesus did most of his mighty works. These are the ruins of Chorazin. Like Capernaum and Bethsaida, Chorazin was condemned by Jesus because of unbelief. Now take a quick look at Lower Golan to the east of the Sea of Galilee. The Yarmouk River Canyon is Golan's southern border, separating Golan from Gilead. To the north are a series of deeply cutting canyons that bring fresh spring water into the northeast side of the Sea of Galilee. Tucked into one of these canyons is the city of Gamla. Gamla is sometimes called the Masada of the North because of its fierce resistance in the first revolt against Rome in AD 67. A 1st century AD synagogue has been discovered here, likely one that Jesus taught in some 35 years before Gamla's destruction by Rome. Next, note Kursi near the delta of Wadi Samach. In the days of Jesus, the east and southern sides of the Sea of Galilee were part of a confederation of Gentile cities called Decapolis.
On the east side of the Sea of Galilee, during the time of Jesus, this area was called Decapolis, and it's somewhere in this area that Jesus healed a Gentile demonic.
Note the location of the Decapolis city Susita, called in Greek Hippus. Here are the Greek, Roman, and Byzantine period ruins of Hippus, a city on a high hill overlooking modern Kibbutz En-Gev. To the south were the Gedera harbor and Hamat Gadara, the region of the Gadarenes, and the lower Jordan River plain, where the Jordan River exits from the Sea of Galilee. The lower Jordan River doesn't flow as strong in our time as in antiquity, since a dam was built in the 1930s where it exits the Sea of Galilee. Still, the area is agriculturally rich. The first Israeli kibbutzim were established here in the early 1900s. Now we move north to the Hulah Valley and the Canaanite Israelite city of Hatzor. The wide, flat Hulah Valley is the gateway to Galilee from the north. The town of Hatzor guards this gateway. Over 200 acres in area, Hatzor is the largest tell in Israel. Canaanite and Israelite period ruins have been excavated here.
Right now we are standing on the ruins of Hazor, and this is the city that Joshua conquered and burnt in the conquest. And behind me you can see the valley of Hulah, the 9,000-foot snow-covered Mount Hermon.
On the north side of the Hulah Valley are Abel Beth Maacah and Dan. The city of Dan was conquered by the tribe of Dan in the days of the judges. During the divided monarchy, starting with King Jeroboam, the northern kings of Israel had a worship center here.
Okay, we're here at Dan. Behind me you can see the high place where Jeroboam placed his golden calf.
A memorial inscription, called the Tel Dan Stele, was found in the Old Testament period city gate fortifications at Dan. The text of the inscription dates to around 840 BC. In the text, the Aramean king Hazael boasts of victory over both the king of Israel and the house of David. The inscription is extra-biblical evidence of the existence and continuation of the biblical dynasty of King David. An important New Testament period city at the foot of Mount Hermon was Panias, rebuilt by Herod Philip and renamed Caesarea Philippi. Here, the Greeks built a temple to the god Pan, the half-goat, half-man god of shepherds and forests. The Herods added a plethora of pagan temples, not the least of which was a temple to Caesar Augustus. By the time of Jesus, the city was a thoroughly pagan metropolis.
Here we are, standing on the slopes of Mount Hermon in the region of Caesarea Philippi. This is where Jesus came and asked the disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said, "John the Baptist resurrected, the prophet Jeremiah." And that's when Jesus asked, "Who do you say that I am?" And that's when Peter pipes up and says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." It is in the region of Caesarea Philippi that Jesus, for the first time ever, begins to teach his apostles clearly that he will go to Jerusalem, he will suffer, he will die, and rise again from the dead.
Note that springs of water at Dan and Panias are two of the main sources of the upper Jordan River.
This is the main source of the Jordan River. It is the main spring of Dan. The water is literally coming right out of the ground right here.
We are at the headwaters of the Jordan at the Dan River.
Right now we're at the Bonius waterfall, which is one of the main sources for the Jordan River, and in Psalm 42 it mentions Mount Hermon and waterfalls.
After passing through the Hulah Valley, the upper Jordan River cuts steeply down through the Chorazim Sill, then spreads into flatter ground on the north side of the plain of Bethsaida, winding its way into the Sea of Galilee. It enters the Sea of Galilee near the site of El Araj, possibly Bethsaida. Note on map 12-2 that the 1948 border between Israel and Syria ran from near Dan to the east side of the Sea of Galilee. But after the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel officially annexed the Golan Heights. This is not the first time that Damascus has contested with Israel over control of the Golan Heights, as can be seen, for instance, on map 6-3. Even earlier, Israel, under Moses, had captured all of Bashan as far as Mount Hermon. This map is made by placing the Satellite Bible Atlas base map in Google Earth. The map gives a better feeling for the relative elevations of the regions on map 1-5. We start at the Sea of Galilee, 700 feet below sea level. Note how lower Golan drops steeply down to the sea. Note the plain of Bethsaida on the northeast side of the lake. Deep canyons cut down through Golan, as does the upper Jordan River through the Chorazim Sill. Now the Hulah Valley, the gateway to Galilee, is coming into view between the higher ground of Upper Galilee on the left and Bashan, Golan, on the right. Bashan rises up in elevation to nearly 4,000 feet near two old volcanoes, Mount Avital and Mount Bental, near the modern town of Quneitra. Quneitra sits on the road to Damascus that runs off the map in the upper right. Back in the northern part of the Hulah Valley, Dan is visible, as well as Panias, Caesarea Philippi, at the foot of Mount Hermon. Now we're getting a full view of the over 9,000-foot Mount Hermon, which is part of the anti-Lebanon mountain range, and is today the border between the modern countries of Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. Now, the Lebanon coastal range is coming into view. Between the Lebanon mountain ranges is the Bekaa Valley and the main road north through Lebanon.